All right, we're going to do a deep dive today into some kidney disease treatment research. And it's coming from Swami Ramdev and his organization.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the yoga guru.
Treatment for kidney diseases.
All right, we're going to do a deep dive today into some kidney disease treatment research. And it's coming from Swami Ramdev and his organization.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the yoga guru.
Yeah, you know him?
Yeah.
We found this YouTube video of him talking about kidney health.
Okay.
And well, he makes some pretty bold claims.
Does he ever? So, like, right away, he starts talking about what he calls fake news about kidney disease. Like that whole idea that damaged kidney cells can't regenerate.
It's like he's taking on conventional medicine head on.
Totally. Yeah.
But he doesn't stop there. He goes on to say that his organization has actually proven that these cells can regenerate.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
That could be huge.
It would be revolutionary. If you think about it, reversing increased creatinine and urea, all those waste products that build up in your blood when your kidneys aren't working right.
Yeah.
He's basically saying they found a way to possibly reverse kidney damage.
So, okay, let's break this down. What evidence is he using for all this?
Well, he talks about research they've done on animals, where they purposely cause kidney damage with certain drugs, antibiotics, and some cancer medications. He really emphasizes that it's these synthetic drugs that do the damage. He makes a point that Ayurvedic medicine hasn't been found to harm the kidneys.
So he's drawing this line between conventional medicine and Ayurveda, like saying, hey, these modern treatments can be bad for your kidneys, but our traditional methods can heal them.
Right.
So what is this miracle treatment he keeps talking about?
It's called rhinogrete, and it's got two parts. There's an herbal formula called rhinogrete vati, or there's the juice form, rhino juice, plus you follow a very specific diet.
Okay, I'm hooked. What's on this diet?
Bottle gourd vegetable, some kind of barley or wheat flatbread with porridge, pretty basic stuff.
And he's saying this combo has actually helped people who are about to go on dialysis or even get transplants. Those are some pretty drastic measures.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about people with really high creatinine levels who are able to avoid all that thanks to rhinogrete.
It's like a beacon of hope for people struggling with kidney disease.
Yeah, for sure.
He even tells some stories about people who were right on the edge of dialysis. Their lives were falling apart. And then they tried rhinogrete. And according to Ramdev, they had these amazing recoveries.
Yeah, those personal stories are powerful. They make the science feel more real. You know, it's not just numbers on a page. It's about real people getting their lives back.
But stories aren't enough, are they? He does mention publishing in these big scientific journals, like PLOS1 and Scientific Reports. He even says they have something like 500 research papers and 5,000 research protocols to back up their work.
Right. He's trying to show that the scientific community has looked at their findings and said they're legit.
But it's not just about how many papers, right? It's about what those papers actually say.
Exactly.
I mean, 500 papers sounds impressive, but what did the studies actually find? Were they designed well? Did they have enough people in them? And the big question, did they actually study rhinogrete itself? Because that's where things start to get a little unclear.
Yeah. That's one of the things we really need to look into. He mentions these famous journals, but he doesn't give us the details about the actual studies.
Right.
Like what were the methods they used? What were the limitations? Those are super important if we want to decide if his claims are really solid.
Okay, so we've got bold claims, inspiring stories, and references to research.
Yeah.
But we need to go deeper.
Right.
We need to look at the research itself and see if it actually holds up.
Definitely. Let's roll up our sleeves and dig into that evidence, starting with those research papers.
Yeah, let's do it. One of the studies in PLOS, one caught my eye. It's not about rhinogrete directly, but it looked at this compound found in one of the herbs used in the formula.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they found that this compound by itself showed some promising results, protecting kidney cells from damage in a lab setting.
So it's not proof that rhinogrete itself works.
Right.
But it gives us a hint about how it might work.
It's a start. So how do we connect these lab findings with what happens in real life? Did any of these 500 papers involve human trials? And how does this one compound fit into the bigger picture of the whole rhinogrete formula?
Those are the key questions. Let's tackle those next.
So we have one study that seems promising, at least in the lab. But what about those human trials you mentioned? Did any of them look at rhinogrete specifically and how it affects kidney regeneration?
Well, that's where things get a bit tricky. They have studies on individual herbs and Ayurvedic formulations. But finding peer-reviewed research on rhinogrete as a whole treatment, Especially in those top journals, it's tough.
So that's a little concerning, right? He talks about all this research, but when you try to find specifics on the actual product, it's harder to find. Why do you think that is?
It definitely raises some questions, and it's important to remember that traditional medicine research often takes a different approach than conventional medical research. The methods they use, how they measure results, it can be quite different.
So how do we figure this out as listeners? I mean, analyzing research papers is one thing, but what does all this mean for someone who's actually dealing with kidney disease and looking for answers?
That's a great point, honestly. This is where talking to your doctor is essential. They can help you weigh the potential risks and benefits of any treatment, conventional or alternative. We're not medical professionals, and this deep dive is about exploring the information, not giving medical advice.
Right, we're all about critical thinking, not telling people what to do. But this whole thing raises a bigger question, doesn't it? This tension between traditional medicine and modern healthcare.
It's a really interesting clash of perspectives. Ramdev is basically challenging the way we think about kidney disease. He's saying, what if we've been wrong this whole time? What if there are other solutions out there? And he's tapping into this growing distrust of the pharmaceutical industry and this desire for more natural approaches.
It's true. You see that a lot these days. People are looking for alternatives, something that feels more holistic.
Absolutely, and there's definitely room for that. But it's important to approach it with the same critical thinking we use for any healthcare decision. What evidence supports these claims? What are the potential risks? Does this fit with my individual needs?
And those are good questions to ask about rhinogreed too. What are the downsides? Even if those stories are compelling, are there any side effects from the herbal formula or the diet?
That's something we need to dig into more, and it brings up another important point. Let's say rhinogreed does have a positive effect on kidney function. What does that mean for healthcare as a whole?
That's a huge question. If we're talking about reversing kidney damage, on a large scale, it would be a game changer. Dialysis centers might become obsolete. Transplant waiting lists could shrink. It's almost unimaginable.
It would be a paradigm shift. And not just for patient care, but also for the economics of healthcare. Think about the cost savings, the impact on research funding. The whole landscape could change.
But you mentioned challenges earlier. What are some of the obstacles we'd have to overcome if rhinogreed became widely accepted?
Well, one big one is integrating traditional medicine into mainstream healthcare systems. A lot of medical professionals are skeptical, and there's often a lack of understanding of these practices.
Plus, there's the whole regulatory side, right? The FDA has strict rules for approving new drugs, and herbal formulations often fall into a gray area.
Exactly. There would need to be a huge shift in how these treatments are evaluated and regulated. And then there's the issue of standardization. How do you ensure consistency and quality control when you're dealing with natural ingredients? That can vary in potency.
Those are all good points. But wouldn't you say the potential benefits are so big that it's worth trying to overcome these hurdles?
Absolutely. If we're talking about possibly reversing kidney damage and improving people's lives, it's a conversation worth having. But it needs to be a nuanced conversation, one that acknowledges both the potential and the limitations of this approach.
And one that's based on evidence. We can't just jump on the bandwagon based on anecdotes and promises. We need to look at the research and understand what it means. But even putting rhinogreed aside, this whole deep dive has made me think differently about how we approach healthcare.
It is fascinating, isn't it? On the one hand, you have this rigorous scientific method with its emphasis on controlled trials and statistical analysis. And on the other hand, you have traditional medicine, which often relies on centuries of observation and a more holistic view of the body.
And it feels like we're at this point where we have the chance to connect those two worlds, take the best of both approaches and create a more integrated system of healthcare. But how do we actually do that?
Well, I think it starts with being open-minded and willing to learn from each other. Instead of dismissing traditional medicine as unscientific, we need to ask, what can we learn from these practices? What insights do they offer?
And on the flip side, those who support traditional medicine need to be open to the rigor of scientific testing. Because in the end, it's about finding what works, whether it's a brand new drug or an ancient herbal remedy.
Exactly. It's about moving past dogma and embracing a more evidence-based approach to healthcare, one that respects both tradition and innovation.
You know, it's like we're at this point where ancient wisdom meets modern science.
Yeah.
And it's not always a perfect mix.
It's more like a Venn diagram. You know, some overlap, but also distinct areas.
Okay, I like that. Explain it.
Well, in conventional medicine, we depend a lot on those big randomized controlled trials, but traditional systems often have like centuries of observational data passed down through generations. It's a different kind of evidence, but it's still evidence.
So how do we reconcile these two ways of knowing? Do we make them compete, or is there a way to find common ground?
That's the question, isn't it? I don't think there's an easy answer.
Yeah.
But we can at least approach both sides with curiosity and a willingness to learn, instead of just dismissing something because it doesn't fit into our existing boxes.
So maybe there's something valuable we can learn from both rigorous scientific testing, ADD, traditional wisdom.
Exactly. It's about broadening our view of what counts as valid knowledge. And I think that's especially important when we're talking about something like kidney disease.
Right.
It's such a complex condition.
Okay, so back to Ramdev's claims about kidney regeneration. Let's say, hypothetically, that more research confirms what he's saying. What would that mean for healthcare if his approach became widely accepted?
Well, if rhinogrete, or even just parts of it, turn out to be safe and effective, it could completely change how we treat kidney disease.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about.
Yeah.
Imagine dialysis and transplants becoming less common because we're able to step in earlier and potentially reverse the damage.
It would make a huge difference in people's lives. Not to mention the potential cost savings for healthcare systems around the world. We're talking about a major shift in how this disease impacts everyone.
But even with all that good stuff, there would be challenges too, right? It wouldn't be an easy change.
Oh, definitely. Integrating traditional medicine into mainstream healthcare, that would require a massive change in how people think, both from medical professionals and regulatory bodies.
Yeah.
There'd be a lot of skepticism to overcome, a lot of education and training needed.
And then there's the issue of standardization and quality control. Like we talked about before, how do we make sure that herbal formulations are consistent and safe for everyone? Especially when we're dealing with something as vital as kidney health.
Right, those are all important points. And then there's the question of access. If rhinogrete becomes this popular treatment, how do we guarantee that everyone who needs it can get it, no matter where they live or how much money they have?
It's like we're opening this Pandora's box of possibilities, good and bad. But even with those challenges, the potential benefits are so big, it seems like we can't just ignore them.
I agree. I think it's crucial to have these conversations now, to think ahead about potential obstacles and start finding solutions, because the future of healthcare could look very different from what we're used to.
This whole deep dive has really made me think. We started with these bold claims, looked at the limited evidence, and now we're pondering the future of healthcare and what knowledge even means.
It's been quite a journey, and I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners is this: be curious, be critical, and be open to new ideas. Don't be afraid to question what you think you know and challenge the way things are.
And remember, when it comes to your health, knowledge is power. Do your research, ask questions, and have informed conversations with your healthcare providers. Because at the end of the day, it's about finding what works best for you. And that might come from unexpected places.
That's a great note to end on. This has been a really insightful deep dive, and I hope it inspires our listeners to keep learning and exploring. Who knows what amazing discoveries are waiting for us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time for another exciting exploration.
Enjoy the video. If you like it, then don't forget to like and share. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe. Write in the comments and tell us what you think about this video.